Hello and welcome to Kicking Tires. My name is Jimmy,
And I'm Justin.
and today we got the best news. I'm going to start with the most amazing news, the 2022 Civic Hatchback. And that's really all I got to say about it because that's all they have shown us. The full release will be coming in the future on June 23rd, but let's get on. Well, let's go. What am I saying? Let's get on to some real news. The Ford Maverick,
This is
our,
huge news. This is
our
this is
favorite new pickup truck.
it just might be. It's so charming. Um, really cute proportions. Cute, not exactly what you typically describe a pickup truck. Um, Overall length just under 200 inches. So good city car length that you can park in kind of normal size spaces. That's your typical, maybe a little bit longer than a mid-size sedan like a Camry or an Accord, but you get a 4.5 foot bed almost. I think it's just under 4.5 feet.
It's 4.5 feet.
Okay.
And then you fold the tailgate down and it's 6 total.
Hmm.
But I think it's a great addition. So Ford, I mean, is a huge company, right? The biggest vehicle, not the biggest vehicle, the highest volume sale that the vehicle that they sell is the F-150, and it's been that way for years. The F-150 works. Then they brought out the Ranger. Ranger isn't doing as well as they may like here in North America. In other parts of the world, it's doing better because it's a smaller truck. They definitely have done some research and said, you know what, a small pickup would work. A unibody small pickup would work because we're seeing this now, right? Santa Cruz is out, and of course the Ridgeline's been out forever. But this Maverick slots between that. It's not as big and as long as the Ridgeline, but it's nowhere near as small as the Santa Cruz because the Santa Cruz is very small next to any regular size pickup. This is actually like a good medium, but the power plant, that's the part that is a little
Might
different,
surprise you, I think. It's kind of,
right?
yeah.
Because the base power plant, instead of just a standard 2.5 liter four-cylinder that you would expect, they went hybrid. And it's the same 2.5 liter hybrid that they use in the Ford Escape, for example. It makes 191 horsepower, but it's aiming to get under 6 liters for 100 kilometers. That's Civic territory. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's economy car territory, and at such a good price point too, right? Like I know we're talking base model, but nowadays base cars are not that base. Like you still
Mhm.
get power windows and power door lock stuff like that. Um, Starting at 20,000 US, 21 with destination.
Yeah, 21 destination and
Yeah,
whatnot.
same thing. But yeah, you're getting backup camera and all that stuff standard regardless. Um, 26,000 in Canada. Do we know that for sure, or is it
Yeah,
just
that's on
Canada?
the press release.
Perfect. Yeah, I really like this size, and I think at this price point, it's gonna work for a lot of people. That just this will replace your small crossover, right? Like that price point, that's gonna be where your even like an HRV is gonna slot in. And
Mhm.
just to me, this screams so much more utility. It's more fuel efficient than an HRV or CHR or CX3 or anything like that. But you also get a usable back seat. For it looks like a decent amount of space for a small pickup truck. Pickup trucks mid-size has never been great for a back seat. This is even a little bit smaller than a mid-size. Do we call it a compact? I don't know. It's its own segment right now, so I don't even know where to categorize it. But I guess it's a small pickup, but it's the size of a mid-size SUV because it's the length of a mid-size SUV. It's a bit
So
narrower.
speaking of the
Yeah.
cab, I watched a few videos already of people getting into the back seat. A lot of US press people
Mhm.
have been invited to Ford and actually got to sit inside the vehicle. It doesn't look that bad. Like people at 6 feet, you're sitting in the back with actually still a decent amount of headroom and legroom. It's because it's
Yeah.
unibody, right? Because it's unibody, the there's no chassis underneath. You don't have to be sitting on top of it, so your
Mhm.
legs can get you can basically go below where the chassis will normally be.
Yeah. It
So
looks like a better place to be than the Ranger, which is kind of
yeah,
ironic.
it definitely does. Like this, I'm amazed. Like this is a really compelling product. When I first saw the information, I was like, I actually really want this. And I don't even like, normally speaking, I want the top trim. I want the Lariat because I want all the toys. But the XLT, the seats, super charming. This
Yeah,
cloth, like
denim
denim look.
jeans.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really trendy. I mean, we saw a lot of manufacturers doing this with the hybrid vehicles, and Ford's on board too. Speaking of the higher trim engine, if you want all-wheel drive, then you're not getting the hybrid at that
Mm,
point, right? So
yeah.
yeah,
It- I'm not sure why they decided not to do hybrid with all-wheel drive. It's available in Escape, so it's kind of
yeah,
weird how you can get it in the Escape, which this is
hmm
based on, but you just can't get all-wheel drive here. Maybe it'll be coming later on.
yeah,
We don't know, but
yeah.
yeah, actually, let's talk a little bit about capability because it's surprisingly good. I mean, they did it in a way that it won't hurt the Ranger. Sucks. It's kind of
hmm
like Porsche, how they, kind of
Nerf the Cayman a
nerfed
little
the
bit.
Cayman and the Boxer to sell more 911s. But the two-wheel drive, so the hybrid version, you're able to tow 2,000 pounds. And then the all-wheel drive, you're able to tow 4,000 pounds with the optional tow package. 4,000 is not bad.
Yeah. And I think they did that on purpose because the hybrid front wheel drive that's gonna suit the needs of most people, right? You put a decent set of tires on there, you'll get through any winter. You can still store and pull just almost as much. You can't tow as much, but for the more heavy duty truck users, I want a little bit more utility out of it, a little bit more power, all-wheel drive. Then that's when you go with the big power plant, which is a 250 horse, 2-liter EcoBoost. The 250 horse is based on premium fuel. I think if you put in regular gas, you get a little bit less, but there's a lot more power there. So I
A
think
lot more
that
torque
if
too.
you need that, then you want the all-wheel drive. Whereas if you want to be efficient, then the front-wheel drive is enough.
Mhm.
That's kind of how we've seen some small crossovers positioned as well. They don't give you the full all-wheel drive and everything because let's face it, a lot of climates don't really need all-wheel drive, and even the ones that think they need all-wheel drive, realistically, you're a set of winter tires away from needing all-wheel drive. Um, so I kind of get it, especially in a unibody car.
Mhm.
Just keep weight down, keep efficiency up, and just because 191 horsepower is not a lot, right? If you start doing all-wheel drive and you start doing truck things with it, it is a little bit underwhelming. We saw that with older trucks, like the Tacoma 4-cylinder. No one wants that. Um,
It didn't
it
sell.
just, yeah.
But let's talk about the bed a little bit here.
Mm,
They call it the flex bed. As mentioned, it is a 4.5 foot bed, extends to 6 feet with the tailgate down. In comparison, for example, the Ridgeline is 5'3", I think it was. So it's a little bit longer than this. Um, but what I'm kind of upset about is, like, while there are like slots that you can put a 2x4 to kind of use it as a divider, you can have the tailgate up so you can put in sheets of 4x8. There are some clever things, but I think they could have done more. Both the Santa Cruz and the Ridgeline has a built-in bed
the trunk.
within, yeah, like a trunk within the bed itself. It's a unibody truck. There's nothing going to be underneath this. I feel like they could have used that space a little bit better.
I think I know why. Is the main reason why is they want to keep the height down because if you look at this next to a Ridgeline has a lot more height built into it.
Yeah.
And to keep the height down, the benefit there is that I think one of the videos I saw on this truck, they talked about how females can reach into the truck bed easily,
Hmm.
and I think that's why they're aiming at a different audience that just if you need kind of more secure storage, you just use the back seat.
Yeah.
But in this case, because the truck is quite low, Looking at where the differential would be, where the spare tire would be, maybe there's just not room for a real usable trunk, underfloor trunk, that is.
I
Um,
I think,
yeah.
but under the floor is actually where they kept the spare, unlike the Santa Cruz and the Ridgeline, which is
Mhm,
kept in the bed itself. And I mean, any truck owner will know if you use that bed, you're not going to be able to get that spare.
mhm,
This being underneath, chances is you may be able to fit a full size if it doesn't already come with one, which makes it a more compelling truck. And
mhm.
let's be honest, Ford, they know truck, right? They know exactly how to build a truck.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's a reason. I just wish there was a little bit more of a smarter compartment. There is like this little box off to the side, which you can put like an air compressor,
Mhm.
very small air compressor, but that's about it.
Yeah. They know their trucks better than anyone, you could argue. Um, and the F-150 has kind of the least innovative bed, I would say, out of the big three,
But
and
it's
they still
aluminum,
sell.
aluminum.
They're still number one, right? Um, there's definitely some market research and what people really care about, what sways buyers, and where you're going to have to compromise. But I think the height is kind of important because the bed looks like to be a pretty decent depth,
Mhm.
but it's also not that high. They show a lot of females using this truck, and I
Yeah.
think that's hinting at something. Even in this press ad, um, I think that's why it needs to be lower. Because like my truck is unusable. Like you have to flip down the back and get in, stand inside it and stuff. Whereas this is something that you could definitely load from the curb, which is nice.
Yeah. I actually kind of like how the bedside as well as
Yeah.
the C pillar is like that gray plastic just
Yeah.
for a little bit more durability if you
It's
are going to be loading
traditional
from the
truck
side.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
There's
let's talk a little bit about styling, because
yeah.
that's one of the things that kind of got me. I'm like, this does not exactly look like a Ford to me, but I think that just might be me. I think the front end kind of reminds me of a Dodge Charger, I want to say. Just the way the headlights and the grill integrate, it has a similar shape to like the Charger or the Durango with the C shape, and
Okay,
then
Durango maybe I can see a little bit, but I don't see Charger at
it's
all.
just the fascia, like the way it dips down a little bit down the middle,
Yeah.
like the police Chargers. Um, I don't find this like front end to be very Ford like. I feel like I would love this with the Bronco front end on it.
I was
Like,
gonna say, I mean, what's stopping you from putting a Bronco front end on it?
why don't you call it a Bronco Maverick, right? Like the
Hey,
Bronco
you
brand
never know.
needs to be,
You
build
never
that
know.
up. I know the
Like,
Maverick namesake has some heritage to it, but the Bronco is up and coming, and we've got some exciting Bronco products. I think this would add to that mix, but maybe it's to go with a more feminine aesthetic as well.
okay, I'm looking at the Bronco right now, the Bronco Sport.
Mhm.
The Bronco Sport has a very similar side vent. I mean, the
Yeah,
the hood line is completely different, but you may be able to
there's
because
no
it's
reason, and like the aftermarket would probably do it.
like if you look at the wheel stamping around the wheel arch, it's very similar.
They're the same chassis, right? Escape, Bronco,
Yeah.
Sport, and this would all
So,
be based. I don't know why the Escape exists anymore, to be
well, I mean,
honest.
there's people that want that more rounded look compared to the Bronco Sport, and you
I
can't get a
know
hybrid in the Bronco Sport nor the plug-in hybrid. So
they only do that because they need to keep the Escape relevant.
that's also
I
true.
feel like, but the Bronco Sport to me is so much more appealing. But maybe that's just me, right? Because that's someone. I'm not speaking for the 50, 60-year old female buyer, right? It's a different market. We're a complete opposite. But at the same time, I think that's why some of the things that we don't care so much for on this truck, I think that's why they integrate it, because they think, okay, you're traditional. Tacoma buyer or even a Ranger buyer, they're not looking at something like this. We're trying to target a different audience, go gardening and stuff, as we can see in a lot of these pictures and the press content. It's for a different lifestyle.
Mhm.
And I think that's important to note is we cannot look at this through the lens of the traditional truck buyer. I think that's where they've differentiated from even the Ridgeline, right? That's kind of why the Ridgeline is always a bit of a flop, and it will continue to be as long as Honda takes that direction with it, because they try to make it seem like, okay, this is everything you have in your typical midsize pickup truck, but way better. It's more comfortable. It's got more practicality to it. It's got just as much towing. Why aren't you guys buying it? Like, you know, I think Ford is doing the right thing here. They're building something that's trendy, charming, cute, whatever you want to call it, but it
It,
also just, yeah, like I
it's
think
hitting a different segment than the Ridgeline, and
exactly.
because it's smaller, it actually makes sense. It,
Exactly. Why would you fight Tacoma for market share, right? That's you're shooting yourself in the foot there. But making your own market, making your own piece of the pie, I think that's where the genius of the Maverick is. Now, I do want to mention that I I'm such a fan of the OG Ranger, like from the 90s, the B series Mazda pickup trucks. I think that truck still screams value to me. I think we still need something in that type of range that just doesn't exist, because you can kind of get it with the Colorado base model, the work truck spec Colorado, but it's still not, the old Ranger rear wheel drive, body on frame, long bed, two doors, or suicide doors with the little sideways jump seat.
can you not get
Um,
a commercial Ranger? No, you can't.
Not the current one, and they don't come in a long enough bed. Whereas the old Ranger, you can get the
Mhm.
shorter cab. There's no regular cab of the current Ranger either.
Right.
Um,
It's
nor
one bed, one size for the
Yeah,
Ranger.
you won't really find any regular cab midsize anymore, or even a short, basically unusable jump seat bed.
Right.
But I think that Ranger has always been, it's at least here in Vancouver. I think that size of truck makes a lot of sense, and I think that's why we still see it everywhere. Like, I cannot go 10 minutes without seeing either Ranger or an old B series Mazda pickup truck. Is I think um, for people that are using them for work, it just makes sense. You don't need that big of a vehicle, but you want a longer bed. Whereas this Maverick 4.5 foot bed is not going to cut it for people that are actually using it for, I would say, moving 4x8s. Like, if you're moving 4x8s for even for a hobby, you're probably not using this small of a truck. Yeah.
I just noticed the XLT uses a key to start the vehicle.
that's that's about right. Yeah.
That's
The Ranger is that way too. As is the
uh
Tacoma, as is the Colorado,
well the
probably the
color
Jeep as well.
no well the Colorado, no matter what trim you get, you still have to use a key.
Yeah.
There is no proximity sensor on the doors. There's no um uh
hmm
engine start button. There's nothing like that on the Colorado, which I was super surprised about considering what you're paying for.
Yeah. I'm not surprised that the XLT you're using a standard key. Let's talk about interior a bit. I think
Yeah.
aside from the seats.
So aside from the seats, the one thing that kind of bugs me a little bit is the
Little.
screen. It is a 8-inch screen, but it's instead of centering it within the dash, it's offset on the left with a cubby on the right. The
Mhm.
cubby they say is good for like your wallet and whatnot, but it doesn't make sense to me. It looks like they were supposed to put a 10-inch screen or at least an optional 10-inch screen, but they just couldn't order it, or there was a shortage or something along the lines of that, and just looks weird there.
Again, I think it might be one of those market research things that like people want high up storage or somewhere to throw their wallet or their
Maybe
phone.
there's a storage
Uh,
behind the screen. Like there's a
yeah,
little bit
for
of a cubby there.
sunglasses. Yeah,
Yeah. But speaking of storage, actually, the ones that are the smartest, I think, is actually the ones on the door. Because
yeah,
the one on the door is, instead of having like a full-on armrest on the side, it's a two-piece design. So there's a floating piece on the front. And what this allows you to do is to put a water bottle there and have it stand completely upright and actually have room there for, like,
yeah.
a
It's very
small bottle.
square. Like it's very the overall. I think the interior design is quite clever. I think
Mhm.
they've integrated a lot of storage. Like yeah, that underseat storage is really good for something this size. You don't
I
get that in your mid-size crossover, right? You gotta
Yeah.
that.
The I did also notice the rear bench, it is a full bench, not a 60-40 split like some others are.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you're going
Ranger
to be
is like
using
that too. Yeah,
Yeah, so if you're going to be using the storage, you won't be able to use the back seat.
yeah. What would have also been cool is a pass through like the Subaru Baja or the Chevy Avalanche. Um, I mean,
Actually,
let's talk about Subaru Baja for a second, right? Why did that thing flop
well,
as
it came out at the wrong time.
wrong place, wrong time, and the wrong car? I would say. I mean, that is more of a phoned it in, right? We just took an Outback and we chopped it up. Whereas this, you can see there's thinking behind it. There's really good interior design. Um, differentiates from a Bronco Sport, differentiates it from an Escape. They didn't just take an Escape and hack the back off, which I think is important. I just saw a hilarious video. I don't know if I sent it to you, but some guy tried to pull a tree with a first gen Escape, like
Oh
I guess
no.
uproot a tree, and it just turned it into this.
Oh,
It's what
perfect.
happened.
DIY.
Yeah, the whole rear three-quarter or rear quarter of the roof just ripped right off. It was hilarious. I don't know why he tied it to the roof either. I think he tied it to the roof rails, like the roof rack.
Because that's the only place he had a tying point, probably.
Yeah. Do they show any pictures of this with a roof rack? I didn't notice anything.
No, I didn't see a roof rack with it.
Yeah, I'm curious if this will have any ground as far as overlanding and off-roading.
I
None
think
of
so.
the press pictures that really show it in that kind of climate. They're showing it as an active vehicle. You can tow your jet ski with it, take your kayak out, put
Yeah.
bikes in it, but I'm not seeing anything as far as like more rugged camping stuff. We see a little RV trailer, taking on the highway, that kind of thing. Four
Well,
thousand pound towing capacity with the all-wheel drive.
you can
Uh,
get it with the FX4 package, and if you do,
mhm,
that's only available on the XLT and the Lariat.
mhm.
But if you get that, you also get the all-terrain tires. There's different suspension tuning, underbody protection, probably plastic to be honest.
Yeah.
And there's also off-road drive modes, so mud ruts, sand, as well as the additional hill descent control.
Mhm.
So, like, I can definitely see it. Like, looking at the pictures on the side, I think a leveling kit would actually do it wonders. Because if you're looking at it from the side angle,
Mhm.
the rear end actually looks relatively high off the ground, especially with the FX4. So if you level up the front, I think it will be a relatively compelling overlanding vehicle. Because overlanding is really just, you know, camping in a
Mile
beaten,
trails.
yeah, it's, just off the beaten path. It's nothing like rock crawling or anything like that. And the Maverick would be perfect for that. You put your tent on top of the truck bed itself. 4.5 feet is plenty for your traditional tents or the pop-up tents. So yeah, I definitely see that working out.
Yeah. Well, six, you have to flip the tailgate down, I think, if you want to camp in the
Well, no,
unless
what I was
unless you're
thinking,
4.5.
no, what I was thinking is, you put your um,
Rack.
essentially rails, a rack system
Yeah.
on the bed itself, which I'm sure you can do. Then you put your
Yeah.
pop-up tent, like the fold-up tents, on the rail itself.
Yeah.
Like, it totally makes sense. It
Yeah,
really
it's
does.
kind of weird that they slapped that antenna on the roof because that kind of defeats the ability to put a roof rack or roof box on there.
uh,
But
it's
yeah, overall, I think I like this car. I think it's a good family vehicle,
it's a truck,
and
okay?
it is it is a truck.
Don't call it a car. You called it a car.
I guess yeah, it is a truck. Yeah, and I think they're on the right track. I think there's something to the way this is marketed. There's a reason why I wouldn't buy it, and I think that's a good thing because you don't want people buying traditional trucks buying this. I think it's
Mhm.
the hybrid front wheel drive thing. This is to steer the crossover buyer
Yeah.
buying, the $25,000 crossover, Nissan Qashqai or that type of vehicle or RAV4 or even going up to CRV, that kind of stuff, and going into something a little bit different. And I think there is a lot that's compelling about this package.
So the question is this or the Santa Cruz?
Boy, I have to say, for me, I would probably go Maverick just because Ford knows their trucks.
Hmm? Yeah. The Santa Cruz, I think it looks really funky, which is something I do like, but I think it's a little too funky.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the video of Ford durability testing this thing.
Oh no, I haven't.
They have a video where they have suction cups and robots inside the car, and they're slamming the doors and everything, and they're just putting it through abuse, and they're like crashing it into stuff. So they did all. There's a video that Ford did of them doing all this truck testing with this thing, with the suspension and whatnot. And I think that's something that Hyundai probably doesn't do quite as well. And I think in the real world, when you're trying to do kind of real truck things with it, that's
Mhm.
where it's differentiated. Just even looking at their marketing, right?
Yeah.
Look at their press release. Look at Ford. They're loading it up with 4x8s. They're towing trailers with it, like real camping trailers with it. Uh,
Yep.
that's something that um, I think they've thought it through a little bit more. Whereas a company like Hyundai, I can see them going, I mean, what's there to it to building a pickup truck?
Yeah.
It's easier said than done, and there's a reason why Ford buyers continue to buy Fords, and there's a reason why they will continue to be the leader with pickup trucks. And it's not as simple as what you see on paper. It's not okay. That Santa Cruz has got a better, nicer interior, better materials for sure, a way sleeker, different appearance, but I think a sleeker, more attractive look
Mm.
in some ways. But as far as getting people to buy it, I think they'll have a much harder time.
Yeah, I think so as well. I just I'm just looking at this in the Bronco Sport front end. That's what
It
that's what I
has to
kind of
be
want right
done.
now. That's what I want.
Yeah,
Because
I see
the
some Honda Element in this, and it's kind of weird. The orange doesn't. Yeah, it's very Element.
I I'm not a big fan of the front end of the Maverick. That's why like the Bronco Sport makes more sense to me. So like who knows? Maybe I can pick one up side by side, just compare it just to
Mm.
see. Maybe.
Yeah, it might fit into your life. I can see this fitting in a lot of people's lifestyle, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
not.
absolutely.
It's not such a compromise as any traditional pickup truck. Even a Hyundai, or not Hyundai, but even the Ridgeline is more of a compromise for some people's lifestyle than this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Let's move on to the next thing here, which is Kia. So
Yeah.
Kia, let's be honest, Kia has been killing it with like automotive design
Design.
since 2010.
Yeah.
I think 2010 is when they flipped because when they launched the Optima in 2010, that was a striking sedan. It really was. And this is the new Sportage. I mean, if you remember back in like the late 90s, Kia had a commercial of a guy in the outback or in Australia. It was like,
Mm.
aye. I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember.
That Sportage with the spare tire on the back.
That was the original Sportage. Things have come a long way since then. I mean, you can kind of say like the RAV4 and the CRV, maybe not as much, but this looks completely different. How it's designed, how it looks, it's just stunning. But something that we talked about earlier, Kia is
Last week's
really
episode.
well, no, just earlier before the show
Oh.
started. Kia is really about design.
Mhm.
There's nothing in regards to the vehicle itself. Um, we don't know anything about the vehicle other than how it's designed, the philosophy behind it. But
Yeah. The whole press release is design, design, design. We're not talking about the engineering. We don't care about that.
yeah,
We're not we're not talking about the customers. We don't care about that.
what we do know is it's based off the Tucson, so it should be
Mhm.
very similar to that in terms of the engines. There probably is a hybrid. There's probably going to be that same turbo motor. So it should be very similar. But something I do like, this interior is a whole lot more inviting than the
Mhm.
Hyundai one, because the Hyundai Tucson interior
It's
with
just a block.
the touch buttons on the HVAC controls, I'm not a big fan of that. But this looks like there's some physical knobs and a big wide touchscreen. This looks a whole lot better to me. It looks more upscale.
I love this interior. I love the fan vent. I love the just the way the screen is a little bit tilted toward very Audi, very Volkswagen.
Mhm.
I mean, that's kind of Kia's always kind of been a little bit Audi, Volkswagen
They
ever
have a
since
little
it's
bit of German,
yeah,
sprinkled onto it.
yeah. The Tucson interior we commented before. It's okay. It's a little bit. It's a sea of gloss black, and it's
Yeah.
just a big square. This is a little bit more comfortable for sure.
Yeah.
Still gloss black down the
You,
middle
you still definitely have a bunch
of
of
all
gloss
your
black.
touch points.
Yeah, because that's your
Ironically,
shifter.
your shifter and your
Ugh.
heated seat and your heated steering wheel. Where you would want gloss black the least, that is where you have all the gloss black.
Yeah. But I mean the colors on the interior, I mean, the blue, white, and this is not a color that a lot of people would spec, because let's be honest, most
Yeah,
people won't spec white seats. And people who do spec white seats regret it after a few months, because they get real dirty
they become blue
real
seats.
fast.
Yeah,
But
I want
like,
to see the base too, like what the base model interior would look like.
oh yeah. Okay, so here's another thing about a lot of Kia and Hyundai products. They look really good in press photos, but
Hmm.
when you get into it and you sit down and you start feeling some of the items, they're not the best. And Sportage is not their high end SUV, right?
Yeah.
Telluride, that's the one that it's going to have those high end touch points. The
Hmm.
Telluride looked really good in photos, but when I sat in it, it was okay.
Yeah,
Didn't
they've
feel
got to
like,
build it to a price point at the end of the day.
yeah, like there's other vehicles that just in that
Yeah,
same bracket feels better.
yeah, and Kia's always gonna have to undercut the mainstream brands
Yeah.
in terms of pricing. So there's only so much you can do. My gripe with this car, as I mentioned to you earlier, is just the lack of cohesion with Kia's design. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't look like I think the Sportage looks great. I think the Sorento looks good. I think the Telluride looks great. None of them, you line them up next to each other, there's no family DNA in
There's
there.
no brand identity.
And I think that's such a weak point for Kia is just you build a car, you want to build the brand. You want to build, okay, well, I like the Sportage. My family's growing out of it now. I want to go into the next step up. It's an easier step to make when you're with, you know, all the Europeans do it so well, but the Europeans
Oh,
do it almost too well. They kind of photocopy their cars up, but other brands, it's easy to go. Okay, I want the bigger one or I want the nicer one. Um, this again is, and I mentioned it last week regarding the Sorrento. It just looks like any other. Well, it has its own look, but it doesn't look like a Kia. Um,
yeah.
there's some elements in there, but overall, that's something they need to work on. You're not just looking for that one transaction. You want that lifetime Kia buyer, or at least get them into other Hyundai Genesis products, perhaps.
Mhm,
And again, there's nothing there to really draw them in.
mhm.
Um, I think that's always been my bias against Korean car buyers is that they're always thinking in the short term.
Hmm.
That's kind of always like, okay, I'm gonna buy what looks great on paper, and that's about it. And I don't think about depreciation, reliability, actual quality, that kind of thing, and just what am I gonna get next? Like I think I think there, if you're a little bit more long term with your thought process, you wouldn't design a car like this that looks nothing, not only like it's, you know, the other cars in the family, it doesn't look anything like the last one, right?
Mhm.
Like look at the CX5. It, the facelift they gave it is enough to distinguish it from the old one, but you can still tell that's a Mazda, right? It's
Yeah.
still the same design philosophy, but it's just updated so it doesn't look old school or outdated anymore. It doesn't look like the car that was around 8 years ago. They're doing it here, you know, it doesn't look like the one from 5 years ago or whatever, but it doesn't look anything like it. There's no family resemblance.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
if you do want like resemblance and you want that reliability, you want that vehicle that looks exactly the same that it always has been and has never changed and will always be around, we got the Land Cruiser.
Yeah, the new 300 series, new
New.
kind of.
Well,
Yeah.
are you sure it's new? Because I'm pretty sure it's the exact same as before.
Yeah, awkwardly tall, really big face. Yeah, it's the same as before.
It's really
Um,
the same. So okay, let's first say this is not going to come to North America, especially in Canada. We haven't had the Land Cruiser forever. We do have the Lexus LX, which is basically a luxury version of the Land Cruiser. Chances we'll probably get that, but let's put the Land Cruiser aside first, because here in North America we're not going to care too much about that. What we care about is the motor underneath, because that motor, it's going to be huge for Toyota. It's most likely going to be the engine that's going to be in in the next Tundra. So there's two engine choices. The
mhm.
first one's a twin turbo 3.5 liter V6. That's petrol. 409 horsepower, 479 pound-feet of torque. And there's also a diesel, also a twin turbo 3.3 liter V6, a bit smaller with a bit less power at 304, but 516 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah, that is a game changer. You know, Toyota, even when the previous generation or the outgoing generation, I should say, Tundra left, or when that one came out in what, oh 07, oh 08, that 5.7 I-Force was kind of a game changer. You know, it was a leader at the time, and it still has that legendary Toyota reliability. And I think Toyota, despite twin turbo technology, you know, we haven't seen turbocharging in much of a capacity from Toyota. It's kind of
Mhm.
like they just experiment with it. But Toyota's always been great with their durability testing. That's something that just differentiates them from any other brand. And again, that's one of the things I always want to stress on. It's not what you see on paper. Like those numbers don't impress us, but the numbers that will impress you is how many of these reach 500,000 K. That is the differentiating. That's why a Land Cruiser is as expensive as it is. It's, you're not gonna get value out of it as you would a Kia Telluride. This is gonna cost twice as much, and I think even in the states, they may or may not bring back the Land Cruiser in the states, just because of how expensive it is to develop this car. It's just too close to the Lexus in terms of price point.
Yeah.
And I get that. And it's got the giant fan, and it's like every other Toyota truck. When you start it, all you hear is woo, and it's just like
All fan
every,
noise.
it's all fan noise. Um,
Uh,
but yeah, no, I mean we're gonna get this chassis. It's a slight revision from the old one. I bet it uses the same pickup points. You can probably put suspension from the old one and that, but they've supposedly made the frame lighter, stronger, as you normally do with a facelift or an update. Um,
it's 440 pounds lighter than its predecessor.
that's pretty big, right? Like, I mean, even on a car this size, you're gonna notice that, and
Yeah.
that's gonna improve not only off-road performance but also on-road performance, which is where people really drive these things. And um, I think I like this interior a lot. I think it's a needed update because the old one, even when it came out, felt a little bit dated.
Well,
This
let's be honest. Looking at this already looks dated.
It looks a little bit dated. Yeah, look at how uninspired the door cards are.
Yeah, like it, there's nothing that's
Yeah,
crazy about this interior, but
which is why we only get the Lexus in Canada. The
yeah,
Lexus is always a little bit nicer. Oh, and this is new for for Toyota. Actually, is the what do they call it? Multi-terrain monitor. So you actually get cameras. You can see. I don't know if that's cameras. It looks like renderings.
yeah. So what it is a camera on the front, but it
Yeah.
remembers where you are, so it
Hmm.
puts that image below.
Yeah.
It's a pretty neat system. It's the same one that you find in like Land Rovers.
Yeah. We've seen it in
Works
other
well.
brands. Yeah.
Works well. But I want to talk a little bit about the suspension because there's something that's really unique about it. It's a new E KDSS system.
Hmm.
KDSS is a hydraulic system that Toyota has used on a lot of their vehicles to kind of balance out the vehicle, where you can reduce sway but still have good articulation, which is important for a vehicle that goes on road and off road. The EKDSS, so instead of using hydraulic fluid that it was before, I believe it still does. I could be wrong. I actually haven't read too much into it, but it's all electronically controlled, unlike before.
Mm. Yeah, that's going to make a big difference as far as catering for off-road performance or on-road performance. You can tune that more. I don't know why it took them so long to realize that that's kind of important because
Electronics?
like those could break. We don't want those. Yeah, but I don't know. We might see some of this technology in the Tundra and the Sequoia, and so
Yeah.
um,
Well, let's not talk about Sequoia. Sequoia's kind of sad in its own little corner, but definitely the
yeah.
Tundra. I see it coming to the Tundra, and I see a lot of the this new development moving on to other trucks because the
Mhm.
Foreigner that needs an update. A lot of this tech may move towards
Yeah,
that, and that will help the Foreigner still
yeah.
be the champion that it is today.
Yeah, Foreigner's got KDSS, so it's logical that they will get EKDSS when that comes. Or these monitor camera systems. I think that will be great on the new Foreigner as well.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from Toyota to BMW. We'll just talk about this real quick, but it's the brand new BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe. It looks exactly the same as the i4, which we talked about last week, except this uses an actual engine rather than a motor. And what I mean by that, it's non-electric. It's regular petrol or diesel, depending on where you're at. Um, Looks good. Always love Grand Coupes, but that's really it. Nothing too special here other than it looks good. That's really all I can say.
Yeah. there's, there's not much to say. I want to see the interior slightly. Let's or
Okay,
the
let's go
trunk.
to that.
Let's see the trunk.
The trunk, man.
Do you
Why do you
have
want?
any
Okay,
trunk
here's a
pictures?
picture of the interior first, because
Oh, okay. That's a 3 Series interior
that's
that we've seen
exactly the
for the
same as
last few
3
years.
Series interior, so no difference there.
Yeah.
Let me go to set two, more interior photos. Oh, this is like
Yeah.
the 340 or 440 probably. Oh no, that's still 430. Looks like a 440. And there is no pictures of the trunk. We
Oh.
can assume it's smaller than the 3 Series, which is kind of small already, to be honest.
Hmm.
Um, but looks good.
Yeah.
Don't mind it. I always loved the Grand Coupes, but I'm more of a fan of like the 6 or the 8 rather than the 4. I think the 4 is just a little too small for it to look good. But speaking of looking good, Bugatti. Bugatti decided that the Chiron is not fast enough. So they launch the Super Sport, kind of like the Super Sport of the Veyron, the orange black one that
Orange and
you,
black, the
yeah,
Halloween
that
edition.
the one that you seen before. This has a brand new, well, not brand new, but Oh, how do I mute
Wow.
Vimeo? There it is.
This
So
Stefan Winkelmann, he's aged quite a bit
he's not as glorious as he used to look.
in the Lambo days. Yeah.
So 8-liter W16 quad turbo, pretty standard stuff. It makes 1,577 horsepower, 11,000 and sorry, nope, not 11,000. That's a lot of torque. 1,180 pound-feet of torque, but it's available between 2,000 to 7,000. How
Wow. It's just a
crazy is that?
wall of torque and just rips your face off until that's the difference, right? A Tesla Model 3 Performance or Model X, whatever, P100D, those are going to rip your face off from 0 to 60. This will rip your face off up
all all
to
all the way
what's
to
the
the
top
top
speed on
speed
this?
of 273 miles per hour.
That's a plane. I love the arrow that they've done on it. Like it's differentiated enough. This is not the Chiron in this
No,
video.
this is something else.
But
So
the
the Super Sport
yeah.
is, it doesn't have any wings or anything like that. It's all smoothed out
Hmm.
to have that higher top speed.
And it looks
Because
good.
the regular Chiron only goes 261 miles per hour. You know, you
Yeah.
you need to make it a little bit more slippery. So this is the Super Sport here in the white. So you can see it doesn't have the wings or anything like that. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
If you want one, $3.9 million. You know, easy.
It's a bargain for a
A
Bugatti.
plane?
A small plane, yeah. You cannot get it. I don't know if planes that are at that price can go that fast. Yeah. This is where you need the land speed. You know how Mustang does the land speed thing?
Oh yeah. This, let's be honest, probably, in our lifetime, we're probably never going to drive a Bugatti. I've seen one up close. I felt one. I sat in one, but I heard one, but probably will never be able to drive one. It's just one of those poster. Actually, it's not even a poster vehicle. It doesn't look good enough to be a poster vehicle to me, anyways.
Damn.
It's nice, but not a poster vehicle. Nice. I'm more of a, hey, let's put a Lamborghini Diablo VT on my wall rather than a
I had
Bugatti
that
Chiron.
one in space,
Yeah,
actually.
well, obviously
I
it's in
had that one.
space.
I got it from the Scholastics book fair, and it's a purple Diablo flying through space.
Of course,
That was on my bedroom wall for a long
I
time. But this to me, I've always loved the Chiron because we have all these kind of garage build, barn build supercars, and they're all just like super aggressive, jagged lines everywhere, vents everywhere. And I think the Chiron has always been, more understated, a little bit simpler, smoother in its lines. And I really like that about this supercar, hypercar, whatever you want to call
yeah,
it. Space shuttle.
space shuttle. Space shuttle works. It's
Yeah.
Elon's next adventure. I I mean, there's not much else to say about it. So let's move on to the review of the week here, because just this week I launched a video to talk about the GLC and the BMW X3. So I did a comparison between the two because the GLC and the X3, surprisingly, unsurprisingly, I should say, is the most popular luxury SUVs you can buy. It doesn't come close, like if you compare the Q5, Stelvio, or anything like that. Doesn't come close. These are the two. The GLC, as the Mercedes is, even this with the AMG package, it's more designed for a more comfortable, relaxed driving experience, even though it's actually faster and has more power than the X3. X3 does feel more sportier with the tighter suspension, but the interior of the X3, because it's based on the last gen of the BMW interior, it's just not as nice. Whereas the GLC, when it got the update to the new MBUX system, it just works better. But 2022 BMW X3 was released yesterday, I think it was,
Yeah.
and they got a brand new update. So you got a bigger grille and you get a fully updated interior, which is probably the best part, and is now in line with the rest of the BMW lineup.
Yeah, I do find the facelift that they've done on the X3 just a little bit crude. Like the bumper vents are very jagged. They've just straightened everything out. Like they've just ironed it. The one that you reviewed has some curves to it. It's a little bit softer. The new one is just more like that one the IX that we saw last week. Um, and so I'm not a huge fan of the new look. I really like the old look actually, especially in the M trims. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
the M Sport front bumper, skirts, and the rear end does make the X3 look a little bit better, but it
mhm,
just looks, I don't know. I think it's a little too aggressive for a regular X3. If it was like an X3 340i, maybe, or X3 40i, I should say, or M40i, I think it's
mhm,
called now. They keep changing the names. But the GLC just looks better to me. It looks like just a more well-rounded vehicle. We were talking about this the other day, like the GLC 63. You love
mm,
the GLC 63,
yeah, the wide
and
body.
I like the GLC 43 because I can't see myself buying a 63. But I mean, it still relatively looks the same.
Yeah.
Relatively.
Well, and I guess one of the things, one of the ways to look at it too is the C class to me, like the outgoing C class, the one that this GLC is based on, just does not do it for me. Like if I were to get one or the other, I would probably go GLC.
Mm,
But then with the new 3 Series and the new facelifted X3, I think I would still lean towards the 3 Series. Like
mm,
I like that more.
yeah.
I think that's kind of the BMW way is you want the sportier version. Um, yeah,
I just think BMW didn't do the X3 justice compared to the X5 because the X5 is really well done.
yeah. They kept this really utilitarian
Yeah.
this generation X3. As with actually all X3s have been very utilitarian.
Remember the first gen X3 and it had like
My
those
family had
plastic
one.
bumpers? Oh.
Oh, after the plastic bumpers, my family had a facelifted one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I just remember the first gen X3 because to make it more rugged, they just body cladding everywhere
it
and
had
plastic
the worst
bumpers.
suspension, like rock hard with run flat tires.
Well, they didn't change it too much from the E91 that it was based on, I think. Or was it 91? Yeah.
It's kind of crossover, so it's X3 is always a little bit awkward because it's newer than the E46, and then but it was yeah, it's kind of like in between E46 and E90 stuff.
Mm,
So they didn't really do run flats on the E46. It was more of a E90 thing, but then the X3 got run flats, which were terrible. I'm curious how the car handled great. The steering was awesome,
yeah.
and just even for its time, the automatic transmission was very good. 6-speed auto, um, good X drive system, but yeah, just the ride is terrible.
Yeah. And that's really all we can say. I personally like when I compared the two, the X3 and the GLC. Um, as much as I like the X3 on how it drove, and the fact that it was a plug-in electric vehicle, I was able to drive it about 30 kilometers without using a penny of gas. I still found myself picking up the keys for the GLC because it was just a better experience.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, that's really about it this week. Anything else you wanted to go over?
No, I think we've covered everything for series. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Mhm.
Well, thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next week for more auto news.
Goodbye for now.